Tonight in Zimbabwe, the political atmosphere is becoming more intense by the day. And many people across the country are now paying very close attention to what is happening between President Emerson Mnangagwa and Vice President Constantino Chiwenga. What started as quiet political whispers behind closed doors is now slowly turning into public drama, public statements, and serious political tension that many believe could shape the future of Zimbabwean politics for years to come. And then, just when many people thought things could calm down, outspoken politician Themba Mliswa came out strongly with a statement that shocked many Zimbabweans and immediately pushed the political temperature even higher. Right now, inside Zimbabwe, there is growing discussion about power, succession, leadership, and what could happen after 2028. Some people are calling it a silent political battle. Others are saying this is simply normal political disagreement inside a ruling party. But one thing everybody seems to agree on is this: something serious is happening behind the scenes. For the past few years, Zimbabweans have had many discussions surrounding the future leadership of the country. Ever since the 2017 political transition that removed former President Robert Mugabe from power, many people believed there was an understanding within ZANU-PF regarding how leadership succession would eventually unfold in the future. Back in 2017, General Chiwenga was one of the most influential figures during that political transition. Many Zimbabweans remember how powerful the military was during that period, and because of that history, Chiwenga has remained one of the most important political figures in the country. At the same time, President Mnangagwa has remained firmly in control of government structures, party leadership, and state institutions since becoming president. Over the years, he has continued consolidating power and presenting himself as a leader focused on stability, economic development, and political continuity. But now, as Zimbabwe slowly moves closer toward future elections and leadership transition discussions, tensions inside the ruling party appear to be growing stronger. The issue became more interesting after growing conversations around the so-called 2030 agenda. Across Zimbabwean politics, many citizens have been debating whether some political forces want Mnangagwa's influence to continue beyond his constitutional term. Even though Mnangagwa has publicly said before that he respects constitutional limits, political discussions around possible extensions and constitutional amendments have continued creating confusion and suspicion among citizens. This is where things started becoming politically sensitive. A few weeks ago, Chiwenga attended a church gathering and delivered remarks that quickly became the center of political discussion across Zimbabwe. During his speech, he referenced the biblical story of King Hezekiah. Almost immediately, social media exploded with reactions, interpretations, and speculation. Some people believed the message carried deeper political meaning. Others believed it was simply a spiritual reflection being overanalyzed by political observers. But in Zimbabwean politics, people rarely ignore such speeches, especially when they come from someone as powerful as Chiwenga. Within hours, clips from the church gathering started circulating widely online. Political commentators began debating whether the vice president was indirectly expressing frustration about internal political developments. Supporters from different camps quickly jumped into the debate, and suddenly Zimbabwe's political atmosphere became even more heated. Then came Themba Mliswa. Known for speaking boldly and openly, Mliswa did not hold back. Instead of defending Chiwenga, he launched a very sharp criticism against the vice president. Mliswa questioned why Chiwenga would remain inside government structures while appearing to publicly distance himself from certain political directions. He suggested that if the vice president strongly disagreed with what was happening inside ZANU-PF, then he should take a clear position instead of sending indirect messages. That statement immediately caught national attention. Some Zimbabweans supported Mliswa's comments and said leaders should communicate openly instead of using coded language. Others accused Mliswa of attacking Chiwenga unfairly and trying to defend Mnangagwa's political camp. And from there, the political debate only became bigger. Across social media platforms, radio discussions, online programs, and political conversations in communities, people started asking serious questions. Is there now open tension between Mnangagwa and Chiwenga? Is the ruling party entering another internal struggle? Could Zimbabwe be witnessing the early stages of a future succession battle? These are the questions many Zimbabweans are discussing quietly every day. One thing people must understand is that Zimbabwean politics has always been deeply connected to power structures, liberation history, and internal party dynamics. That is why every speech, every statement, and every political appearance is carefully analyzed. Right now, many observers believe the relationship between Mnangagwa and Chiwenga may no longer be as politically smooth as it once appeared publicly. And honestly, if you study Zimbabwean politics carefully, you will notice something important. Major political shifts often begin with indirect signals before becoming fully public. Sometimes it starts with speeches, sometimes with disagreements hidden inside party meetings, sometimes with public silence. and sometimes through allies speaking aggressively on behalf of powerful figures. This is why many analysts are paying attention to people like Mliswa and other political voices speaking loudly at this moment. Because in politics, powerful people do not always fight directly at first. Sometimes their supporters and allies begin the public battle before the main figures themselves respond openly. At the same time, ordinary Zimbabweans are watching all this with mixed emotions. Some citizens feel frustrated because while politicians appear focused on succession discussions and internal battles, many ordinary people continue facing economic challenges, high living costs, unemployment concerns, electricity shortages, and financial pressure. For many families, daily survival remains the biggest issue. So when political tensions rise publicly, some citizens become worried about national stability and the future direction of the country. Others simply enjoy following the political drama because Zimbabwean politics has become one of the most closely watched political stories in Southern Africa. Now, another important thing making this entire situation sensitive is the military factor. Chiwenga is not just any politician. He is a retired general with strong liberation war credentials and deep military history. His role in the country's political structure has always made him one of the most influential individuals in Zimbabwe. And Mnangagwa himself is also an experienced political strategist who has survived political battles for decades. So when these two powerful figures appear to be politically uncomfortable around each other, people naturally begin asking questions. Some analysts believe the real battle may not even be happening publicly yet. According to some political observers, what Zimbabweans are seeing now could simply be small signs of a much larger internal struggle taking place quietly behind closed doors. Others disagree completely. Some political commentators say people are exaggerating normal political disagreements and turning them into sensational succession stories. They argue that ZANU-PF has always had internal debates and different opinions, but that does not automatically mean there is a major crisis. But regardless of which side people believe, one thing is clear: political tension inside Zimbabwe has become one of the biggest topics dominating conversations right now. And as 2028 slowly approaches, the political atmosphere may become even more intense. Already, different groups inside the ruling party appear to be positioning themselves carefully. Supporters are defending their preferred political figures online every single day. Every statement from senior officials now receives national attention. Even small comments are now being interpreted politically. And that tells you how sensitive the atmosphere has become. Another reason this situation is attracting huge attention is because Zimbabweans still remember how quickly political dynamics changed during the final years of Mugabe's leadership. Before 2017, many people also dismissed internal tensions as ordinary political disagreements. But eventually, those tensions exploded into a dramatic political transition that completely changed Zimbabwe's leadership. Because of that history, citizens are now more alert whenever they see signs of internal political discomfort within the ruling party. And let us be honest, succession politics can become very complicated in any country. The moment powerful individuals begin thinking about the future leadership structure, alliances start changing quietly, loyalty becomes more strategic, political statements become carefully calculated, supporters become more aggressive online. Every public appearance becomes important. That is exactly the phase Zimbabwe may now be entering. At the same time, opposition supporters are also watching everything closely. Some believe divisions inside the ruling party could create political opportunities for opposition movements in the future. Others think ZANU-PF still remains too powerful and organized to be seriously weakened by internal disagreements. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens continue hoping for economic improvement, stability, and better living conditions regardless of political battles happening at the top. And this is where leadership becomes extremely important. Because when political tensions dominate national headlines too often, investors also begin watching carefully. Regional leaders begin paying attention. International observers begin analyzing developments closely. Zimbabwe's political stability matters not only for citizens inside the country, but also for the broader Southern African region. That is why every major political statement now attracts regional attention. Now, let us talk honestly about Mliswa's role in all this. Temba Mliswa has always been known as someone who speaks his mind openly. He rarely avoids controversy, and because of that, his statements usually spread quickly across Zimbabwean politics. This time, however, his comments carried even more weight because they touched directly on the relationship between Mnangagwa and Chiwenga. Some people believe Mliswa was simply expressing personal political opinions. Others believe he was indirectly defending certain powerful interests inside the ruling party. Whatever the case may be, his statements added even more pressure to an already tense political atmosphere. And since those comments, discussions have continued growing online every single day. Supporters from different camps continue defending their positions strongly. Some insist Mnangagwa remains fully in charge and politically secure. Others argue that Chiwenga still commands enormous influence because of his liberation history and military background. And then there are citizens who simply want political leaders to focus more on improving the economy instead of political positioning. Now, another thing people are quietly discussing is whether Zimbabwe could eventually experience another serious internal restructuring within ZANU-PF before the next elections. Right now, nobody knows for certain. Politics can change very quickly. Alliances can shift overnight. People who appear politically united publicly can secretly disagree behind closed doors. And people who seem politically distant today can suddenly reconcile tomorrow. That is why Zimbabwean politics remains unpredictable. But one thing many analysts agree on is this: the political road toward 2028 may become one of the most interesting periods in Zimbabwe's modern political history. Already, every major speech is now receiving national analysis. Every church appearance becomes headline news. Every political comment spreads across social media within minutes. And every public disagreement immediately creates speculation about succession politics. This tells you how deeply Zimbabweans are paying attention to the future leadership direction of their country. At the same time, many citizens are also hoping leaders avoid creating unnecessary political instability. People want peace. People want economic growth. People want jobs and better opportunities. And many Zimbabweans hope political competition inside powerful circles does not negatively affect the country's future. Now, one thing we must also understand is that politics often involves strategy and perception. Sometimes leaders intentionally remain silent while their allies speak for them publicly. Sometimes indirect messages are used instead of direct confrontation. Sometimes political figures avoid open conflict while quietly building influence behind the scenes. And because Zimbabwe's political environment has always been highly strategic, many observers believe the real story may still be unfolding gradually. For now, Mnangagwa remains the sitting president and continues controlling government leadership structures. Chiwenga remains vice president and still carries enormous political significance because of his history and influence. Mliswa continues speaking openly and attracting attention with his statements. And ordinary Zimbabweans continue watching every development carefully. What happens next is something many people are now waiting to see. Will tensions calm down? Will leaders publicly unite and silence speculation? Or will more statements, reactions, and political signals continue emerging in the coming months? Nobody can answer that completely right now. But one thing is absolutely certain: Zimbabwean politics is entering another highly dramatic and closely watched phase. And as events continue unfolding, millions of people across the country and beyond will keep paying attention to every speech, every reaction, and every political move coming from the nation's most powerful figures. Because in Zimbabwe, politics never stays quiet for too long.